2022, my brother got me this book for Christmas. Formula 1 circuits, maps and statistics from every Grand Prix track. There's a lot of tracks in here, so naturally there's a few not great ones. Here's 5 of the worst. First of all, Avis. This circuit had been shortened down a few times, and it was 8.3 kilometers long by the time Formula 1 arrived there in the 1950s. And here it is. 12 long straight, which was a public road, bookended by a couple of hairpins, and one of which, the North Curve, was pretty steeply banked. And by pretty steeply, I mean it featured a 43-degree banking. Now, racing had been held there many times before Formula 1 rocked up, and it hosted a non-championship F1 race in 1954, before it hosted its first and only World Championship F1 race in 1959, hosting the 1959 German Grand Prix. Why did F1 only have one World Championship race here? Well, I'll put it this way, that 43-degree banked North Curve, well, it was made of bricks, had no barrier, and gained the name the Wall of Death, because cars could, and did, fly off it. In fact, that's exactly what caused the death of Jean Bera in a support race for the 1959 German Grand Prix. So, yeah. This track was insanely dangerous, and a dangerous track ain't exactly a very good thing, hence why F1 never raced here again. In fact, after 1961, F1 never raced on banked circuit tracks again until they rocked up to the Brickyard in 2000 and then returned to Zandvoort in 2021. Next, Zeltweg. Zeltweg is another circuit that only hosted one Grand Prix in Formula 1, but it was the first home for the Austrian Grand Prix. Here's the track, running up and down a runway with a peri-trip off to the side in an L shape. Now, the problem with this track was the surface was pretty rough, and it had a nasty habit of bracking the cars. Not exactly what you want to happen during a Grand Prix, and not to mention the pits were in between the 12 straights, so if you wanted to do anything between the pits and the paddock, you had to do it a 4-session started. After a non-championship race here in 1963, the first and only World Championship race at Zeltweg was held in 1964, the first ever Austrian Grand Prix in Formula 1. And of the 20 cars that started, the race only 9 finished, and the majority of the retirements were from the cars braking. And you know, a track that breaks cars ain't great. The track got deemed too dangerous, and it was off the calendar. Now let's head across the pond to the United States of America, to Dallas, Texas. In the 1980s, F1 really fancied America, and one of the places F1 decided to try host a race was the city of Dallas in the state of Texas. And here's the track in question, a temporary street track made up of 23 corners. Now, the main problem with this track was heat, because this race, in Texas, was being held in July. So it was bloody heat, to say the least, upwards of 38 degrees C. And this heat caused a few problems. First of all, it did a number on the tarmac, with the track bracking up for the insane heat. And the heat also wasn't a great thing for the cars, as we know. Extreme heat in F1 cars don't always mix all that well. And it doesn't really mix that well with drivers either, who had a few measures to try and deal with the heat, like having a bucket of water thrown over you during a pit stop, or like how Hub Rothengatter handled it. And this is a direct quote from the 1964 Dallas GP Wikipedia page. He dashed straight to a spectator area after he retired for the race, where he commandeered several cups of water for pouring over his nether regions. That's definitely one way to handle the heat. Only 8 cars finished the race, which was also the scene of this now famous clip of Nigel Mansell collapsing while trying to push his car, just collapsing from the exhaustion and the heat, and his car was broken, you know, he was pushing it to the finish. And now, I want to quote this from the Dallas Grand Prix Wikipedia page. In a 2022 statement to The Magazine, co-organizer Larry Waldrop said the July date was chosen to minimize the possibility of rain during the event, and he expressed regret that the organizers did not adequately anticipate the effects of Texas summer heat on the event generally and the pavement specifically. Now, I have never been to Texas, so any Texans or people who've been to Texas, feel free to chime in the comments. But even I know that Texas, aka part of the South in America, the Deep South, in July, aka the summer, It is going to be hot as hell. How can you plan a race for daytime in July in the south and no think about the damn heat? Anyway, moving on and staying in the USA, Phoenix, Arizona. This track appeared for the first time in summer 1989 and was held 12 hour times at the start of 1990 and 1991 seasons before falling off the calendar, and the reason for moving the race from June to March being heat, of course. Only 6 cars finished that first race in Phoenix, by the way, but the track consisted of 15 corners and was another temporary street circuit, because of course it was. The thing right here is that it was just dull and did not attract spectators. The attendance for the first year was around about 31,000 and then it just fell for there. In fact, apparently for the 1991 race, the Ostrich Festival, all held on the same day, attracted a bigger audience than F1 did. Yikes. It was just dull, and the dull track does not do anything for keeping your place on the calendar, because if spectators aren't being attracted to it and you're not making money from it, it's not really gonna have any point staying on the calendar, is it? And finally, let's head to Las Vegas. No, not the current track. I'm speaking about Caesar's Palace. Another victim of F1's crush on America in the 1980s. F1 first took to Sin City in 1981 to host a race there in the car park of the Caesar's Palace Hotel. Because it was in a car park, that meant they had limited space to work with, not to mention damn all elevation change, which was also a problem of Phoenix, Arizona, actually. And this was the track that was presented to the drivers. 14 corners of a track that kind of doubled back on itself a few times. Caesar's Palace played host to the 1981 and 1982 season finales, and it was hate, like the last couple of tracks I mentioned. And intense heat ain't exactly very easy for drivers in the cockpit to deal with, and the cockpit itself gets very hot. Not to mention it was a counterclockwise circuit, which just puts more strain on the drivers. The race also just didn't attract crowds, so understandably, it didn't survive, because as I just said with Phoenix, if you don't attract spectators and you're not making money from the race, then, well, what's the point in holding it? Or, well, it's not gonna keep its place on the calendar. What tracks do you think are some of the worst that Formula 1 has used? Let me get your thoughts in the comments below. Drop a like if you enjoyed the video, subscribe if you're new around here. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye bye.